Shine.fm presents Stronger Together, a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationships, and community. Here's Seth Tower Hurd.
This is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. Now, the whole point of this thing, right, is if you're a Christian, you're supposed to be sharing Jesus with other people. And statistically, most Christians in America will never do that. Pastor Andy McGowan leads the church, but also does work for an organization called Dare to Share. So if you just want to set that up real quick, I actually think a large number of the Shine audience may have seen you on stage at some point. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. So I pastor a church, Immanuel Church in Kenosha. That's my day job. I moonlight with Dare to Share. I speak with youth conferences that used to be all around the country. We're doing something new now called Dare to Share Live. We'll talk a little bit about that today. But basically, we want to equip every teenager everywhere to share their faith around this country and even around the globe. And we believe that this next phase of what God is doing is going to rise up through teenagers.
And, I may be jumping ahead of myself here, but there's kind of this question of like when you think about, it doesn't matter if you've got, my wife and I are going to have a brand new newborn any day now. So it doesn't matter if you've got a newborn, a 9-year-old, a 17-year-old, somewhere in between. You need to be thinking about the fact that many kids who grew up in church leave after high school, and some of them find their way back to Jesus. Right.
Well, they're leaving even earlier in high school now. I mean, I see people leave at really 3 different junctions. As I see people leave around 6th grade. Sometimes they never make it out of 5th grade to the church world. They may be going to church, but they've checked out. The next one would be 8th grade, and the next one is around 10th grade. Okay. And then comes college. So we usually think like college, oh no, are they going to stay in the church? There's really 3 phases before that I'm seeing now.
So one of the things that I know that kind of is showing up is kids who are actually involved in ministry that like take an active part of not just like showing up to stuff, but like they're playing on the worship team or they're doing something or, they're sharing their faith with other people. Like those are the ones that you're not going to see bounce out of church and be like, whatever happened to that one? And if a parent or somebody who's got, we've all got kids in our lives in some ways in our family or church or whatever, that needs to be something we're thinking about a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the Generation Z coming up, everybody really in high school now and below, up until 2011, those who were born in 2011. So pretty much now till 2011, those who were born, they're Generation Z. Okay. And so Generation Z, they want to experience church. They want something tangible. And so whether that be volunteering at church or whether that would be being involved somehow in worship, but really it's articulating and sharing your faith and seeing that faith play out in real life that is going to really keep someone locked into the church, because it's not just their parents' church or it's not just theory. It's something they've actually tangibly experienced themselves.
This is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. Andy is with Dare to Share. So before we kind of talk about what to do about this, can we camp out for just another minute on why has the American church been so bad at this? Because, you look around the world at Christianity and you're like, China exploding, Brazil exploding, so many people coming to Christ. And it's not like that doesn't happen in the United States, but if you go down to the individual level, it's much less likely statistically that somebody's ever going to tell anybody else about Jesus, like we said, right?
Well, I mean, let's just face it, we've been comfortable. It's been pretty cush, right? I mean, there's just the amount of resources that we have, the amount of music that we can listen to, that's all exclusively Christian. I mean, we are flooded with it. And so really, I don't think up until now, I think we're actually hitting this red line. But up until now, we've been pretty comfortable, and there really hasn't been a necessary urgency. Let's take a look at England, for instance. I have friends in England. A Soul Survivor had these huge youth conferences. About 30,000 British teenagers would go to it. It was just shocking to me. And I was talking to the founder, Mike Pilvacci, and I said, hey, how do you get all these churches to come together, and how do you mobilize this many students in a post-Christian society such as England? And he said, the reason why we're able to do this is because there's just not enough of us left together to fight over the non-essentials other than making sure that we're on the same page of the gospel. And I think part of it is that we have a lot of our tribes still here in the United States. Hey, I'm Baptist, or I'm Anglican, or I'm Nazarene, or whatever, you know what I mean? And those are important. Like, denominations are important, and it's fine to have your distinctives, but we really have to come together in unity, whether it be in our schools, whether it be even the community, with the gospel, not just kumbaya unity, like, hey, we're all Christian, and what's that mean? I don't know, it doesn't matter. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is being gospel-centered, and something we talk about at Dare to Share, gospel advancing, that we will advance the gospel together as a unified church in this community. So, for instance, in Kenosha, we have, let's just say the biggest youth ministry, which I think is a couple hundred. I always tell, and we weren't the biggest youth ministry. I mean, we had a big youth ministry, but it wasn't the biggest. And I said to him, to the youth pastor of the biggest church, I said, hey, here's the deal. We need 10 more churches your size. I am so happy you are killing it. You are not competition to me. I want to see 10 more youth ministries that size, because then we'd be reaching 20%. 20% of the city, of the teenagers in the city. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot if you think about it that way, if we need 10 more to reach 20%. And I think in America, we just really haven't seen that necessity. We haven't seen that need, and we're getting close. Like, I believe it's like, okay, if we don't advance the gospel, then we might die.
Yeah. And that's so on point with actually the research that's coming out. And it's like, if we're talking through, you want the kids in your life, the kids in your home, whatever, to, from elementary school up through high school, college, and beyond, to share their faith with people. It sounds like you're saying the first thing you got to do is look in the mirror, because one of the things that's coming out right now is, if you really want your kids to grow up to just hate faith, the way to do it is to fake it. And there's just all kinds of research coming out.
And the Millennials and Generation Z see through that instantly.
Yeah, there's all kinds of research coming out right now. You kind of hear all these things about Christianity dying in the United States, which actually isn't. It's not really true.
Yeah.
However, what we are seeing is that if kids are raised in a home where they see parents that are not truly in a relationship with Christ, it's like, well, we just kind of do this thing and it's good for you, so shut up and go.
Right.
Those are the kids that wind up in college and beyond, that say, I don't want anything to do with this.
Right.
I'm out.
Right. I mean, we're all hypocrites in the sense that we are sinful, right? But when people say, I don't want to go to church because it's full of hypocrites, whatever, what they're really saying is they teach this as theory, but they never play it out in their real life. They don't embrace what they teach. And so you're right. Christianity is not going to die, but what we see is a pruning. And this actually, there's some silver lining to this. I don't think it's all bad. I mean, it is tragic that we see denominations or certain churches that die because they didn't reach people for Christ. But there is a pruning of people that say, hey, I'm a Christian, but they don't do anything with it. Or what's going to do, it's going to reduce it to a sense of, hey, we really believe what we say.
Yeah.
And that's going to be attractional in the sense that there's conviction.
Yeah. So let's talk about reversing this thing.
Yeah. Right.
We got enough bad news. By the way, this is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. Andy McGowan joins me from Dare to Share. By the way, there's events coming up. October 14th is their big event, and we'll try to link to that in the post on Facebook and YouTube. If you're listening to this on the radio, you can always go grab the video. It's in entirety, or search Shine.fm podcasts wherever you download podcasts, iTunes being the most popular. And you can go ahead and get the info there. And if you missed it in the conversation, you can grab that as well. So what we know, right, is for the most part, kids in growing up, children's ministry through, youth group and then into college, for the most part, are not going to share your faith. And if you're like, no, but it's different. It may be different in your church. It may be, but let's talk about how we turn this thing around, because it's not great. It's like just kids sharing, under 18 and then college age, sharing their faith in Christ is not awesome right now.
No, it's not. In fact, I had some discussions with some youth pastors from around the country just a week ago in Denver, and they said, hey, how are things going on in some of the areas? And they said, you know what? A lot of areas are shrinking because they are married to the method of how maybe they did youth ministry or church 10, 20, 30 years ago. But they're not really married to the idea that we need to mobilize students with the gospel, maybe in new ways.
Okay. And can you unpack that a little bit more for me?
Yeah. So I think, for instance, first off, because when you're married to a method, it's maybe the program. It's maybe what you do becomes the most important thing. And people are like, why is it shrinking? Why is it shrinking? Or why does it not have the impact it would? 1995. I'm like, well, we live in a different culture in the sense of how people process information, even just the cataclysmic change of social media and how students can fact check youth pastors or their senior pastor in the pew. Like I was dial up. I'd have to have my 14.4 modem going nuts, if I was going to do that with a pastor when I was growing up. But the thing is, it's changed. And so like the way information is just coming at students and how they look at it and say, okay, is this true? Is this not true?
Yeah.
And who they trust. What's interesting is that a number of teenagers will trust their peers more than their doctor when it comes to health information. When I see that in youth ministry, I'm like, are you serious? Maybe you should believe that.
By the way, maybe to talk to your kids about that.
Yeah.
Thing about your friends is they're not doctors.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're telling you to duct tape your cut shut. Don't do that.
Yeah. But take that whole thought to theology or how unpacking your faith in your cultural sphere is that they're going to go to their peers maybe before their parents, their pastor. Not maybe. It shows it's true. That's what they're doing. And so the way that we really turn this thing around, back to your question, is that youth leaders have to be committed to not only being gospel-centered, but advancing the gospel and training up teenagers to train other teenagers. And so it's moving from the youth pastor being a quarterback to them becoming the coach. That is the shift. It's that the youth pastor does everything, or a few key leaders, and maybe a few key students, they do everything, but they don't unleash it and teach and coach other students this is how you bring your faith up. This is how to do it in a relational way. And in fact, Dare to Share, we have what we call the cause circle. We pray, we care, we share. We want to know that this is not a project. This is a conversation, a relational conversation that we care for this person. We want to bring it up without blowing up, okay? We want to bring it up without throwing up, right? We want to bring it up to where people feel valued, even if they're going to reject Jesus in that moment, but they know that you're bringing it up because you care for them, and it's a conversation at that point.
Andy McGowan from Dare to Share joins me. We're talking about, kind of the earliest elementary school years through college, why the kids in your life, don't wind up sharing their faith on the whole with their peers, and what that can look like. If we could talk about the reasons why maybe somebody, specifically kind of with 22 and under, right, would not speak up about what they believe. I think one of the things that that there's a concern about is people won't like me or whatever.
Yes.
I can only speak to my experience. I'm not an expert. In my whole life, the only time I ever kind of talked about what I believed, and somebody was really angry about it, was actually I gave this girl a ride, and turns out she was into witchcraft. Okay, and so she really hated Christianity, and I kind of explained what I believed, and she basically told me that was the stupidest thing ever. And I'm like, well, you're still getting a free ride. Yeah, you didn't have to wait for the bus, so yeah, I guess whatever. But there tends to be a stigma that if you share Christ with somebody, there's going to be all this blowback. And all I can do is speak to my own life, that most people are actually kind of curious about why I believe what I believe if I'm not weird about it.
Yeah. I think one of the best things that Dare to Share teaches, if you go to one of their conferences or you go to Lead the Cause, which is their summer camp. It's a 1-week camp. They're in Los Angeles, Chicago, Austin, Washington, D.C., Denver. One of the things, of all the things they teach, I think that has even impacted me as a pastor, is ask, admire, admit. We call it AAA. When we bring Jesus up, the first thing that we typically do, in the way that even the paradigm I was taught growing up in the church, was just tell them what you believe and tell them it's truth, and then have them accept Christ right there, seal the deal. And how often did that work well for you or for me? For me, not very well. Usually people would persecute you at that point, and sometimes for good matter, good reason, right? But the thing I love that Dare to Share teaches is you talked about giving a ride to a witch, right? And so in Ask Him I Admit, you'd say, well, hey, could you kind of explain your journey? How'd you become, I don't know if it's Wiccan or whatever. How did you get into, how'd you become a Wiccan? And so I've actually used this method on plane rides all across the world. The latest one, I was sitting next to two couples I didn't know, I just wasn't on. And so I invited them to church, and I realized they said, no, we don't go to church. We're Muslim. I'm like, oh, and they just come back from Saudi Arabia, for their pilgrimage. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. But what could have been a hostile conversation actually was a fantastic conversation, because I just, for the next 15, 20 minutes, parked on asking them questions. So tell me about that. Like, how'd you get into that? Like, okay. And then I moved to the admire. And this is where people start getting a little hairy. Like, what do you mean you can admire somebody that has a different view? I'm like, well, they pray a lot and I pray a lot. And now I know it's not to the same God and all that, but like, how can I take down this wall so I can admit this is how we're different, and this is how you need to, really, this is what we believe. This is what separates us. And it's big. There's a big separation. This is not kumbaya, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, hey, your dedication. So for someone who's a Muslim, hey, you pray a bunch, right? Yeah. Now, it might not be for the reason that we do. As Christians, it's hopefully out of grace and out of a response to what Jesus did. And so you have an overflow of worship and adoration. That's why we pray to God, right? We want to connect to him because of who he is to us. If you're in a works-based relationship or works-based religion, you may do it to try to get to God. But here's the deal. Using the same vernacular, it's like, okay, you pray a lot. Oh, well, I really admire that. You're so dedicated or whatever. You can say the same thing on Mormon or whatever. Then finally, when that wall's down, then he came in and said, hey, can I just share something with you guys? So can I just share with you a time I went to the Middle East and shared Christ, or I have a Mormon friend. Hey, can I just share with you where our differences are? And at this point, I've listened to them a bunch of times. I've complimented them, and they're like, yeah, sure. And it becomes this conversation whether they come alongside and say, you know what, I want Jesus. I want to place my faith and trust in Jesus, or they don't. You don't leave the conversation where their walls are built up. Hopefully, if they didn't place their faith in Christ, there really is an opportunity that maybe somebody else is going to pick up that conversation, and it's not going to leave that ill taste in your mouth. So ask him, I admit, I think, is one of the best things that Dare to Share has unleashed on this country of our teenagers, and really resetting the dialogue and how to go about sharing your faith.
Yeah. If I can dive in right there, by the way, this is Stronger Together, talking to Andy McGowan from Dare to Share about kids and how to help them share their faith better. I think one of the questions that parents may have concerns with is like, well, if I let my kid hang out with, you fill in the blank, they're a Buddhist family or something like that, how do I know that my kid's going to share Jesus and their child's not going to talk my kid out of what he believes?
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, obviously, shameless self-plug, get them to go to Dare to Share, let them know why they know what they know, right? But I think beyond just what Dare to Share does is get into your local church, or if you don't have a local church or the youth group, find one to where they can begin to wrestle with their faith, know why they believe what they believe, and grow in their faith in Jesus, so that they can be the salt and light in the world. So that if there is someone who's Buddhist, or there's someone who's an atheist, or whomever, like, they can have a friendship without being pulled to not believing anymore. It's something to where they can be an influence. That's why I teach teenagers around the country is you have been called to unleash your influence in Christ to others. And it doesn't mean that you hold up a sign saying, you're going to hell if you don't, accept Jesus. It's like, no, it's not that. It's that you have an influence to advance the gospel, and whether you are going to bring them to Christ or you're going to set up another conversation, that's up to the Lord.
Yeah. This is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. Andy McGowan from Dare to Share joins me. By the way, the event is coming up nationwide, coming up in October 14th, I believe. 13th. October 13th. Yeah. So if you're in the Chicago area or Michigan area, it's pretty easy to get to. Indianapolis is a little bit more of a hike, but you can check in with your local church about that.
And there's one in Cincinnati, I think, in Indianapolis.
That's the closest.
A little bit of
a little over.
Yeah.
Let's talk about just the parenting thing here, and maybe if you're volunteering as volunteering in church or whatever, it's very, and I can already see this, and I'm not a parent technically for a couple more weeks here as my wife's
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So awesome. Yeah.
So I can see how it's very easy to get so slammed to just kind of think that, like, okay, this year my kids are good. I dropped them off at church, like the youth workers or whatever. They got it. The kidmin people have got it. Children's ministry, the youth groups got it. And that even if you're just like, oh, this isn't on my radar. Thank you, God, I go to a good church. That doesn't always work the best, right? So as somebody who's in helping kids evangelize, why do parents have such a vital role to play in helping your kids know what they believe so that they can they have something to say to somebody else.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because here's the deal. The number one reason why parents have a role is time. Youth pastors or youth leaders might have 1, 2, 3 hours a week if you're lucky. Now, if you're a parent, think of how much time do you have with your kids. Now, somebody like, I don't have enough time, but you still have more time than 1, 2, 3 hours. I hope anyway. You know, you need an adjustment of a schedule, whatever. But like, you have meals perhaps, or you have those car rides. If you are a busy parent, you know, you're driving them into 3 different games in a weekend. You still have those times, windshield time. And this is a moment where you can have meaningful conversations with your kids and just kind of seeing where they're at. What's going on in life, and really showing by your life the importance of Christ. And so I always tell this to parents that when I was doing youth ministry for over a decade, it just dumbfounded me when parents we were like, like my kids just don't follow Jesus anymore in college. And I just wish that, church was of importance. And I'm like, well, to be honest, I'm talking to the parents, you didn't make it important. Like you were at church maybe once every 5 weeks, and everything that could come in front of youth group, it did. So here's the deal. I don't know why you're dumbfounded. It's children will emulate what parents prioritize.
Yeah.
And so again, it's time, it's example, what they see of you during that time. So parents actually have quite the influence on kids. In fact, I believe the stats are a couple of years old here, so I like to see newer stats. But the stats I did see is that parents still rank at the top when it comes to influence on children. Right around the children's peers, and then pastors, youth workers, it's a little bit lower than that.
This is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. Andy McGowan from Dare to Share joins me as we kind of start to land the plane here about kids and evangelism. Can we just kind of talk about, where the other kids in your kid's life or the other kids in your neighborhood are at? So this kind of, there's all these different things about this generation is more likely to be kind of in faith than this generation or whatever. Sure. So we got kids coming up right now that they're going to be the next generation. And from what I think I've read, they are more of a mixed bag as far as what they think about not just Christianity, but faith in general versus atheism, right? So just even kind of the general belief in God, where's this generation at? What's going on?
Well, Z is going to be the real wild card here. What I hear experts saying, even just last week, I was hearing just guys in the know of this, that they're saying, hey, Generation Z is going to be the first post-Christian generation to rise up in our nation. I don't know exactly what that means quite yet, because that's all predictive. What we can see is with millennials already, and millennials have tuned church out to a varying degree, and they have their reasons. But when I look at generations, I want to say, okay, let's leverage the strengths here. Where can the church adjust the communication to leverage the strength for a better tomorrow? And I'm going to tell you, millennials, and what I see from Zs, they just want authenticity. I know that word might seem dated, but they want us to be real with our faith. They want us to actually mean what we say.
Yeah.
And they're looking for conviction. This is the weird thing, is I see sometimes organizations or churches or Christians respond kind of watered down in hopes that it won't offend anybody. And that's actually driving people away quicker.
Yeah.
It's hastening what you're trying to stop. And that is, a bleed in your numbers or your bleed in your influence. And what I find is that even if it's diametrically opposed to the person that you're having a conversation with, if there's a relationship, especially, you could say your conviction, at least they know where you're at. And at that point, do they follow it? I don't know. That's depending on the person and what God's doing there. But I really believe that the millennials and Generation Z could be a generation that if we leverage the authenticity of Jesus and we do what we say, they're ones that will stand up, pick up, and give their life to a mission. And there are elements. Greg Steer, the founder of Dare to Share, he speaks of this all the time. That there are elements in this generation of teenagers that resemble some of the Great Awakening. And so it's wrong for us to park on, it's negative, doom and gloom. There are some bright, shining glimmers of light here.
Well, and let me just say something awesome about what most people would think of as negative news, that there's less people. Obviously church attendance versus 40 years ago is definitely down.
But a lot of that was cultural.
Yeah, I was going to say, the good news about that is if somebody doesn't really believe, but they kind of feel like they got to show up in church because if not, they're not going to be kind of accepted in the community or whatever. you can't ever really share Jesus with them because they're just going to fake it no matter what.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely. I mean, even just as an adjustment for our church, again, committed to the gospel, committed to, inerrancy, committed to the core values of faith. But the thing is that what we tell people is we don't want your compliance, because with that you can look, smell. I don't know what Christians smell like, but you could look the part, but you get to that moment and you're like, but you never were the part. And I see that. I mean, I even see that with even some Gen Xers now, and it's just like, whoa, what happened? They were complying. And so we even adjusting in our youth ministry, or even a church as a whole, as our church is committed to reaching many millennials, is that we want space for people to sort where they're at on faith in light of what God's word says. And so it's tough because sometimes it's disappointing. Like someone's like, I don't believe this, or this is what's going on in my life. But the thing is, okay, wait, God do a work in this person. And the beautiful thing about that conversation and even that prayer is, if you're complying, you'll never pray that way because you think, oh, they're all good. No, they're just complying with what you want.
Yeah. This is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. Andy McGowan from Dare to Share joins me. I do want to wrap up just on asking a couple more parent questions here. And by the way, this is something that we would love you to see, your kind of your church group, your youth group, you as a family, get your kids to the event nationwide is October 13th. You can find out more daretoshare.org on daretosharelive.com.
Yeah.
I should have looked up the website. I just apparently shot from the hip there.
I mean, you can daretosshare.org will get you there too.
Let's land on as a parent.
I'm sorry, daretosharelive.org.
We really butchered that. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
So sorry, Greg.
Yeah.
It's the radio. We can't fix it.
Yeah.
Okay. So parents, you spent 15 years in youth ministry, and you're working with kids all over the country, and in some ways all over the world. What do you wish that more parents knew? Like, kind of speaking as somebody who's in ministry, what kind of questions do you wish more parents would ask their kids? What kind of tools can you give parents, even from, pretty young kids, to say like, hey, here's just some good stuff you can be doing from age 4 to age 24, basically?
Well, I think one of the things, this is related with another organization, but one of the things I do right now with my kids is I download the YouVersion Bible app. Actually has a kids Bible version. So it's the kids Bible app. And so every night they beg me to go through the Bible, and then they ask questions, and sometimes their questions are like, whoa, but I think as parents, as your kids age, and especially as they get in the teenage years, just making it a priority to have some spiritual conversations and really asking the question, hey, how are you living this out? And giving your children, giving your teenagers opportunity to live it out. And with that comes training. So that's why Dare to Share Live, I think, is a huge opportunity nationwide. I mean, from Puerto Rico all the way to Alaska, this is a simultaneous event where we're going to have a main, really kind of the main sites in Denver, Colorado, and then it'll be through streaming. We'll have over 90 host sites, almost 100 host sites. So teenagers, up to 25,000 teenagers at one time are going to be trained in the gospel. And at lunchtime, from Puerto Rico all the way to Alaska, they're going to be hitting the streets having gospel conversations. So having parents actually making space and schedule for their students to be trained in to know what they know and to share what they know is huge. I cannot overemphasize that.
This is Stronger Together. It's a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationship, and community. Hey, if you caught any of this conversation, on the radio and you want to pick up the rest of it, you can always search Shine.fm podcasts wherever you download audio, or check out the video in its entirety on Facebook or YouTube. And when you're on those podcast app, Shine.fm is not just doing this. You're going to have more chances throughout the week to specifically listen to content around faith, music, and family. So you can subscribe over there. The website, one more time, on the event for
daretosharelive.org. And if you're in the Chicago area, Harvest New Beginnings in Oswego is your location.
And if you're in Michigan, Indianapolis, you can grab Grand Rapids is the closest Michigan one. Indianapolis is going to be Cincinnati. You can check out the website there. This is Shine.fm.
That was Stronger Together, a show about growing in marriage, parenting, relationships, and community. Subscribe to the Shine.fm podcast to catch every episode of Stronger Together, available on the iTunes podcast app and wherever podcasts are available.